Hello dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Today we will tell the fascinating and in some places tragic story of the Assad family, the clan that ruled Syria with a firm hand for more than half a century. Over the decades in power, a whole cult was formed out of the representatives of this family. Statues, portraits, and posters of the clan's father, al-Assad, his wife Anna, their daughter, and 4 sons, among whom Bashar al-Assad later took center stage, could be found on every corner of the country. However, behind the external invincibility and divine halo, there were many family secrets, personal conflicts, and not always happy fates. Today, we will talk about the ups and downs of the family of former Syrian ruler Bashar al-Assad and what became of them after the collapse of his 24-year dictatorship, which ended in 2024. It all started with al-Assad, the Syrian military officer and politician who took over as the country's de facto dictator in 1971. His wife, Anna, came from a powerful family. It is believed that it was her status and connections that helped Hazu to consolidate his position in the state. But the nature of this relationship was far from an ideal romantic union. According to eyewitnesses, what brought them together most was mutual benefit and aspirations for power. al-Assad ruled Syria for almost 30 years, from 1971 to 2000. Anna is his wife and the Grey Cardinal at court. Despite her modest image in the public eye, she had considerable influence over her husband and the country's political top brass. Their family had 5 children, daughter Bushra, sons Basel, Bashar, Majed, and Mahara. Over the years, a kind of personality cult has developed around them. Photographs and statues of the Assads literally filled the streets, schools, and government offices. They wanted to look invincible and almost divine in the eyes of Syrians. At the same time, any attempt to object or disagree with the family's policies was brutally suppressed. Several colorful figures stood out within the family. Bushra, the eldest daughter, was the first to be born in 1960. Intelligent and determined, she earned the respect of her parents, and her ideas were valued by many in Haz's entourage. Basil, the eldest son who was projected as a direct heir. He had great prestige in the army and political circles. Bashar, the second son who became the future president of Syria after his father's death. It was not originally planned that he would inherit power, as he was considered less inclined to politics, and even left to study ophthalmology in England. Majed was a quiet and closed child who later suffered emotional and mental problems. He hardly participated in the affairs of the state and died relatively young. Mahara, youngest son known for his ruthlessness and forceful influence, would later become Bashar's right-hand man in holding the regime together. While Haz was absorbed in his political career, the children were raised mainly by Anna. Observers noted that the father was aloof and cold toward his offspring. Individual interviews recall that days could pass in a week when family members did not actually communicate with each other. It was their mother, Anna, who kept them under her tutelage and taught them to value the family clan, for it was most important for the Assads to maintain their own power and influence. Hez came from a humble rural family, and Anna from a family known in financial and political circles in Syria. The marriage was said to be a bargain between a promising military man and a girl from a powerful family. Anna paved the way for Haz into the highest circles, and he gave her the role of First Lady and future influence in the state. It was believed that Haz was considering a second wife or divorce, as Anna's charm did not match his ideals of a more glamorous and flamboyant companion. Nevertheless, no formal divorces occurred. Perhaps Haz valued the stability and benefits Anna provided. The Emloff family's influence expanded during Haz's reign. Her relatives took key positions in banking, oil, and telecommunications. As a result, the alliance, at least outwardly, looked stable. Anna, with her calm temperament, rarely appeared in public. Behind the scenes, however, it was she who formed and maintained the family ties, and through her connections helped to strengthen the dictatorship. The eldest daughter, Bushra, had a strong character and intelligence, for which her father valued her very much. There are versions that Haz and Anna dreamed of transferring power to her, if Syria were not such a patriarchal country. But social realities and Islamic traditions did not allow to present a woman president in those years. Bushra therefore occupied a shadow position, running the office next to her father, giving advice, participating in international trips. But she remained formally in the shadows. Dreams that Bushra would become Syria's first female president were shattered by unyielding tradition. When it became clear that a female head of state would not be accepted by the elites or the people, Haz's eyes turned to his sons. Since Bushra could not assume the presidency, Basil became the leading contender to succeed Haz. He was charming, charismatic, and was actively preparing for a political career. In addition, he was responsible for the military aspects of his father's power structure, dealing with security issues and creating the image of a strong leader, but he died tragically in 1994 in a car accident. It is believed that he simply failed to control his car, but there are a number of theories surrounding this death. Basil's death forced Haz to urgently rethink the succession scenario. The choice has now fallen to Bashar. Initially, Bashar did not think about the presidency. He studied in England for an ophthalmologist, led a quiet life far from clan intrigues. But after Basil's death, Haz summoned Bashar back to Syria and announced that he would be the second in the family to inherit the throne. In 2000, when Haz died, Bashar was formally elected president, having adjusted the constitution to do so, because Bashar's age did not yet meet the minimum requirements for a head of state. The majority of the population initially pinned their hopes on Bashar, seeing him as a softer and more modernist leader, especially against the background of his British-born wife, Asma. But the reality turned out to be different. Bashar soon adopted his father's rigid style of rule, suppressing opposition and maintaining his dictatorial habits. His mother, Anna Mlof, also applied pressure, saying Bashar needed to continue the legacy of Haza without making concessions. His younger brother, Mahara, became a right-hand man in the army, known for ruthless operations against opponents. After all, Bashar ruled the country for 24 years, from 2000 to 2024. His regime was famous for its brutal repression, war against its own people, and destruction of Syria during the so-called Arab Spring. Many analysts and Syrians themselves did not believe that Bashar's power could collapse overnight, as he had been destroying opposition forces for decades with the support of allies, especially Russia. However, December 8, 2024 was a turning point. The rebels, united with international anti-terrorist forces, were rapidly advancing toward Damascus. The day before the fall of the capital, Bashar fled to Russia. Twice, there are two versions. Bashar himself claims that he never intended to leave, but was forced to retreat when the rebels had already entered Damascus. International media outlets point out that Assad had been preparing his escape route for a long time, sending money and buying real estate in Moscow City, including 20 apartments estimated at $40 million and handing over $250 million in cash to Russia in 2019. His wife Asma, a British national suffering from leukemia, and their 3 children left Syria even earlier, leading many to question the sincerity of Bashar's claims of no plans to escape. Bashar was granted political asylum in Russia thanks to President Vladimir Putin, a longtime ally. However, life in exile is rumored to be not as rosy as the ex-dictator would like. In the mid-2020s, Turkish and Western media repeatedly reported that Asma al-Assad was going to divorce Bashar, move to London, and settle with her parents there. It was reported that she is dissatisfied with life in Russian exile and wants quality medical care while fighting leukemia. However, these rumors are questionable. Asma is under international sanctions with her assets in the UK frozen. If she tries to enter the territory, she could face prosecution for involvement in regime crimes. The Kremlin officially rejects all reports of confiscation of Bashar's assets or special permits for Asma to leave the country. Perhaps these are mere information throw-ins given the reputation of the Turkish press, based in part on Asma's long-standing disagreements with Bashar's relatives. In any case, no credible evidence about Asma al-Assad's divorce has been presented. According to the latest reports, she is still living with her husband and children somewhere in an upscale neighborhood under the protection of Russian services. The regime of Haz and Bashar was an extensive network of kin. However, since their overthrow in 2024, the fates of many of them have turned out differently. Maher al-Assad is Bashar's influential brother. He managed to flee Damascus, presumably to Iraq, then moved to Bashar in Russia. Considered the second most powerful man after his brother, known for his violent reputation. Ana Malouf, Bashar's mother, died in 2016 even before the fall of the regime. Bushra, older sister, left Syria many years ago after the assassination of her husband, Asf Shawkat, 2012 Damascus bombing. Finally severed ties with Bashar, settled in Dubai. She was said to hate her brother for his policies and blamed him for the deaths of loved ones. Basel died back in 1994 in a car accident. Majed led a secluded life, suffered from illnesses, died in 2009. Thus, only Bashar, Mahara, and Bushra survived from the core of the Assad clan. Bushra has long been in exile and does not keep in touch with his brothers. Outwardly, the Assads have always put up an impenetrable facade. But inside, there were tough conflicts, especially after the death of Haz. For example, Bushra had a very negative attitude toward Bashar, doubted his leadership skills, and despised his wife Asma. In response, Bashar and Asma sought to relegate Bushra to the periphery. The conflict escalated when Bushra's husband, Asaf Shawkat, was killed in a bombing in Damascus, and Bashar offered no condolence or support to his sister. Such family feuds indicate that their rule was never monolithic. However, the contradictions did not prevent the Assad clan from maintaining power by using repression and fear in society. The Assad clan belonged to the Alawite community, a religious minority that, under Qaz, took leading roles in the army and intelligence services. This gave Alawites the illusion that the Assad family was protecting their interests. But after 2011 and the outbreak of the civil war, many Alawites held the Bashar regime responsible for countless casualties. As the rebels began to advance toward Damascus, some of the Alawite elite demanded an explanation from the Assads. Bushra, after losing her husband, left Syria, fearing that she too would face reprisals. Today, the Alawite community is also divided. Some still support Bashar as a protector against Sunni rebels, while others curse him for the destruction of Syria and the colossal bloodshed. The regime's defeat has caused members of the Assad family who didn't die to scatter across the planet. There are also more distant relatives, like cousin Rabal al-Assad, who oppose Bashar. They live in European cities, openly criticizing the ex-dictator. Some have found refuge in London, and there are those who are hiding in other Middle Eastern countries. We should not forget that the Assads held power by controlling all key sectors of the Syrian economy. When the civil war broke out, the family moved huge funds abroad. According to some estimates, Bashar's fortune could reach several $billions, much of it transferred to offshore accounts or Russian banks. Mahrez has often been featured in reports on drug trafficking related to the production of Captagon and other contraband, making him considered the godfather of the regime's shadowy revenues. One way or another, the family has enough of a financial cushion to live in luxury, even in exile, hire security guards, pay for expensive lawyers, and provide for their own comfort. The only question is how long this will last under increasing pressure from international courts. The topic of Bashar al-Assad and Asma's possible divorce periodically pops up in the press. Some claim that Asma dreams of returning to London, where she was born and educated, and expects better conditions for treatment for leukemia. But this is contradicted by a number of facts. She is under sanctions, her property in Britain is frozen, and Britain can accuse her of complicity in war crimes. Under such circumstances, it is rather naive to talk about Asma's cozy life in her homeland. There is a version that these rumors are beneficial to some opposition forces trying to present Assad with a situation of alleged betrayal by his loved ones. But we have no evidence of a real divorce. Despite the luxurious life that leading members of the Assad clan continue to lead away from Syria, we must not forget at what cost this family held power. The civil war unleashed by the regime has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and turned millions of Syrians into refugees. Bashar and his inner circle have used chemical weapons, bombed peaceful neighborhoods, created humanitarian blockades, and brutally tortured political prisoners. This brutality casts a shadow over the entire family, as for many years the Assad dictatorship was based on fear and repression. Some of the Assad's relatives publicly disavowed Bashar, pointing to the senseless brutality of the regime. Others, on the contrary, remained loyal to him to the end, hoping for entourage and privileges. Bashar's abrupt fall in 2024, previously seemingly impossible, demonstrates that no dictatorship lasts forever. The long war and the gradual isolation of the Syrian regime did its job. When rebels and international forces swept into Damascus, Assad chose to preserve his life and flee, effectively abandoning his last loyal supporters. Now the former Syrian dictator dwells in exile, regularly appearing in the Russian media with excuses that he never thought of leaving the country. However, the facts show pre-withdrawn millions and expensive real estate in Moscow. His brother Mahrez shares the exile's fate. Sister Bushra has long lived in Dubai and hates Bashar for dragging the family and the country into bloodshed. The story of the Assad family is a tale of how one dynasty, with an outwardly indestructible character and backed by a cult of personality, can fall in the blink of an eye when it loses the support of the people and part of the international community. Years of repression and corruption were not without consequence. The accumulated discontent led to the abrupt end of the era. However, the members of the Assad clan are not a single monolith. Some of them have tried to distance themselves from the repressive regime. Some have already died, others have taken refuge abroad. Relations between them have become saturated with jealousy, resentment, and personal dramas. Sadly, the price for all these years of dictatorship is the fate of millions of Syrians who have been treated as expendable in the name of wealth and power. And yet, the finale remains open. There are still calls for the prosecution of Bashar al-Assad and his entourage for war crimes. Perhaps one day international bodies will be able to bring him and other top officials to justice. Then the story of the al-Assad family will end not only in shame, but also in retribution for the horrors suffered by the Syrian people. Thank you for watching this issue to the end. Write in the comments what you think about the fate of the Assad dynasty and the crimes they have committed against the people of Syria. Give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Here we tell you about the most acute events of world politics and history. See you in the next issues.